Hey, Jerry, can you explain the core of compare and contrast and how writing in that structure can heighten the joke? For example, I understand that the triple creates a pattern that is shattered by the punchline. Thanks. In this video, I'm going to show you the compare and contrast structure and explain to you why it's such an effective and efficient structure in comedy used by the top professionals and why it gets great laughs. And I'm going to show you how you could use it to make your comedy effective as well. And it starts right now. Ask the Joke Doctor is brought to you by Breaking Comedy's DNA, the quintessential comedy writing system that actually demystifies comedy. Check the description box below for the link to purchase Breaking Comedy's DNA and become a funnier comedy writer or comedian today. Jerry Corley here, aka The Joke Doctor, standupcomedyclinic.com, with another episode of Ask the Joke Doctor. In this video, we're starting with a question from one of my followers on this time it's Instagram, who basically asked about the compare and contrast structure. So let's talk about it. Since as long as I can remember, compare and contrast has been around, we're used to seeing it in side-by-side comparisons. Coke, Pepsi, PC, Mac, before, after. Compare and contrast as a comedy structure taps into the recognition, surprise, and incongruity comedy structures. In much like analogy and how it shows how two dissimilar ideas are similar, in this case, you're showing the stark differences between two dissimilar ideas. It's used by a lot of comedians like George Carlin, Jim Gaffigan, Rita Rudner, Bill Burr uses it a lot. In fact, Jim Gaffigan uses it so much, it's almost built into his comedy rhythm. If you feel like you lose the audience, like the audience isn't following a joke very efficiently, then maybe you need to insert some compare and contrast. It taps into the oldest definition of a joke, two dissimilar ideas converging. In one case, like I said, instead of we're talking about the similarities, you're talking about the stark differences. Remember, live stand-up comedy is happening right now. It's happening in this instance. We don't have time to pick up that remote and hit the review button or to look at a previous paragraph in a book. The audience has to get what we're saying right now. And since audiences' brains can only keep track of 2 or 3 ideas at the same time, guess what? Compare and contrast makes that super efficient. And in this video, I'm going to show you 2 different ways to use it. One is just showing the side-by-side comparison and how they're different. And 2 is showing you something called a leading comparison, which I do at the end, which is super effective. It's one that Jim Gaffigan uses a lot that actually makes the audience create an expectation so that you can hit them with a surprise. Compare and contrast is a great way to demonstrate to the audience your filter on how you look at life. My father's a truck driver. You know, most dads teach their sons how to throw a football or ride a bike. My dad taught me how to pee in a Gatorade bottle doing 65. Compare and contrast is a great way to open an act. Last night I was playing in a town called Havre, Montana. That's the name of the town, Havre, Montana. And it's right as the show started, this guy yells out, "Hey, dude, you know how they call it Havre?" I'm like, "No, why, man?" He says, "Because the women is so ugly. They're like, you like my wife? You can have her." I was like, "Dude, that's funny." But last night I was in a town called Dewar. Sort of the same thing without the commitment. Bill Burr often goes to compare and contrast throughout his entire act. That's one of his favorite go-tos.
My favorite thing about the Black Lives Matter marches was the store windows that would have the plywood over the windows, and then it would say Black Lives Matter on top of the plywood. I just love the duality of that message, you know? It's like, Black Lives Matter, we're all the same, we're all one. Don't burn down my store, you fucking animals. Everybody is welcome in this store. Anyone can come in, one at a time, follow him. It's just a safe space for everyone.
Jim Gaffigan also uses a compare and contrast structure.
I don't kind of tan. There's no medium rare for me. I either look like I've never been outside or I was just released from a burn unit.
Okay, this is a perfect example of how applying a compare and contrast structure to a premise makes the joke work better. Gaffigan could have just said, "Whenever I get sun, I look like I was just released from a burn unit." That would have gotten a nice, decent laugh because of the exaggeration, just released from a burn unit. And when we exaggerate and describe something, we say it without saying it. That's known as comedic irony. But instead, he couches it in the compare and contrast. So he says, there's no medium rare for me. I look like I was either never outside or I was just released from a burn unit. And he does that exaggeration with the voice at the end to heighten it, right? So that is an either or, and that's pure compare and contrast. And I think that heightens the joke better than just saying, whenever I get sun, I look like I was just released from a burn unit. Funny, but it's funnier when you have the comparison.
But just the day-to-day life of being a woman, honestly, it looks too hard. Just hair, what a woman has to deal with hair, with cut and color and goos and potions. It's like, what does a guy have to do with his hair? Not have a mullet.
Here's Rita Rudner, and she actually does the bad news, good news trope.
Well, there's always a silver lining. The bad news is the world is ending. The good news is everything's on sale.
Compare and contrast could really be used to sort of like clarify a point comedically in a story. Like, for example, during the Olympics, Michael Phelps basically broke all these records, winning gold medal after gold medal. And my biggest achievement was waking up from a nap. Now, that's pretty good, right? It's a compare and contrast. But if we really clarified it and tightened the bit, it really adds some clarity to the bit and makes it more effective. So I've been watching the Olympics. I feel like such a loser. The announcer's like, at 3 p.m. Eastern, Michael Phelps won the gold medal in the 500-meter freestyle and a gold medal in the 100-meter backstroke. And at 3 p.m. Eastern time, I woke up from a nap and took a leak. So those are side-by-side contrasting elements, right? That's where we show a stark difference between the two. But what if I showed you how to lead the audience into thinking we're going a certain direction, and you hit them with that left turn, thus creating kind of a reverse based on the compare and contrast. It goes like this. My wife and I have incompatible sleeping arrangements. She likes to sleep on her left side, and I like to sleep at my girlfriend's. We're obviously taking the audience down a road with that leading comparison, making them think that we're going to go left side, right side. But instead, I go a totally different direction, but produce something that is also related to the subject matter we're talking about. We can do it in a different way too. Like, my wife comes from a really smart family. Like, my wife's sister went all the way to a PhD at Stanford, and my wife went all the way the first night I met her. In this comparison, the joke is designed to lead the audience into thinking that I'm going to continue talking about a level of education, but instead I take it and go a different way at the last second, changing it to something sexual or cynical. You want to see more compare and contrast used masterfully throughout an entire set? Check out my breakdown of Jim Gaffigan right here on this screen. Also, go to my website and check out my a la carte writing courses, where I take structure, devise, tropes, comedians, break it down while giving you an exercise so that you can develop some expertise in writing these tropes yourself, all in my a la carte comedy writing courses. There's now over 100 of these courses available for you to choose from, and you can find the link in the description below. I'm Jerry Corley. I hope this brought value to your day.